This is Hart. Let's look at good and bad trees. Some trees and bushes are very, very good for our ecosystems and our wildlife. Some trees are not very good at all. So let's look at the difference. But first, why are we talking about this? Well, this is a Carolina chickadee. And in order to feed even one nest of Carolina chickadees so that they can reproduce and have babies and live long and prosper, we need 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars. 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars for one nest of baby birds. If you want a variety of species, then multiply that number by. If you want to have more than one nest of breeding chickadees, then multiply that number by whatever it is you want. And keep in mind that these caterpillars have to be found within about a 50-meter radius. So think of an area about the size of a football field, maybe twice as wide as a football field, but about as long. And you get the idea that this is a lot of caterpillars that have to be found within a relatively small area. So you really, to have any variety of birds at all, you need hundreds of thousands of caterpillars that have to be found within an area that's about the size of a couple of football fields sitting side by side. So if you walk out your front door or if you go into a park, do we have the trees that are productive enough to produce that many caterpillars? Here's an example. A white oak tree is a very, very good tree. On this particular day, it had 410 caterpillars of 19 species. So if you have a number of white oaks in an area that are productive like this, and you don't have insecticides and bad stuff like that, then you have a fighting chance of having an area that can be the home to a variety and a number of breeding birds. But by contrast, if you have Bradford pears, then on this particular day it had one caterpillar of one species, and that's not going to work. We have lots of places that are filled with Bradford pear trees and nothing else that cannot support any birds whatsoever. Another example, a black cherry tree is a very, very good tree. On this particular day, it had 239 caterpillars of 14 different species. It's a very, very good tree. If you have a bunch of black cherry trees in a particular place, then you start to have the number of caterpillars that are needed to feed nests of baby birds. But by contrast, what do we have instead? We have lots of burning bush. And burning bush on this particular day had 4 caterpillars of one species. That's not enough to support the wildlife that we all want, because birds are not just for bird watchers. Birds, when they're healthy and thriving, that means biological diversity. We need to support biological diversity. Instead, what's happening worldwide is biological diversity is plummeting. We need to take that trend and move it in the other direction. So, a local example, Tom Sawyer Park. Now, this particular place, Tom Sawyer Park is filled with bush honeysuckle, autumn olive, Bradford pear, all the usual suspects, all the invasive species that not only kill our native plants, but themselves they do not support any caterpillars whatsoever in terms of what we need for birds to thrive. So you look out in this woods and say, oh, that's woods, we've left that alone, and pat ourselves on the back for leaving the woods alone and not paving over it. But we haven't left the woods alone. We have imported all these species, many of which have become invasive. They're highly unproductive. That's one main reason why biological diversity locally and globally is plummeting. So to recap, there are good and bad trees. And we need good trees so we can feed birds. We need birds because we need biological diversity. It's not just the aesthetic pleasure of seeing birds. We need this in order to thrive and prosper as a species. We need biological diversity, and that means a diversity of birds. One nest of chickadees needs 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars, and multiply that number by however many bird species you want, however many nests of breeding birds you want, multiply that number, and you get the idea that we need hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of caterpillars within any one, within any 1 or 2 or 3 blocks in order to have what birds need to live, thrive, and reproduce. Another example, a white oak tree is very productive. A Bradford pear tree is very unproductive. A black cherry tree is very productive. Burning bush is very unproductive. A local example, Tom Sawyer Park is filled with all of these unproductive invasive species: bush honeysuckle, autumn olive, Bradford pear. Join me if you want to make a difference. Let's get out into the parks this summer at Cherokee Park, at Tom Sawyer Park, and other places in order to make a positive difference for biological diversity locally and globally.